Hello, I'm David Petreco and welcome to a Nautical Institute webinar. This week we're talking about Gmdss, and we are here with our friends from Iridium, and we have Wouter, Kyle, and Thomas. Thanks guys for joining us. I'm assuming that everybody knows what Gmdss is because we all live it and survive with it. But I'll just read out the definition. It is the Global Marine Distress and Safety System, and it is an internationally agreed upon set of safety procedures, type of equipment, communication protocols used to increase safety and make it easier to rescue distressed ships, boats, and aircraft. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm sure everybody is aware of the Nautical Institute. We're an international professional body charged with the professional development of our members and the industry. And Gmdss is very important to us. It will save our lives, it'll save our colleagues' lives, and we very much welcome that there are now 2 providers of Gmdss from this year, and which gives more choice, and choice is a good thing, but we need to share the information so that we can all make better decisions, and that's what this is about. So before we start the main event, I'd just like to say this is an interactive event. Your cameras and your microphones will not work, but you can write in questions, so please do. Please keep them as succinct as possible, and feel free to send in your questions at any point. In fact, the earlier the better from an organization point of view. There are some handouts you can download, and these are excellent handouts. All the slides that you will see with all the information contained are there for download, so please feel free to download those. And from time to time, we have some pop-up surveys that we'll be doing to engage you, because we're very concerned about your opinion, your thoughts on these things, and your ideas, so please share those with us. After the event finishes, there will be a pop-up survey just to let us know a little bit more about you and how you found the event. So please do that. It only takes about 2 minutes. In about 2 to 3 hours after the webinar ends, you will have a little email saying thank you very much for attending, and there will be a link to a personalized certificate, which you're very welcome to. A recording of this event will be available on our YouTube channel, so please feel free, give it a day or 2 to get up there, but feel free to watch again if you've missed anything, and to share that with your colleagues. You are not alone. There are nearly 600 people out there interested in this subject, so when you do write your questions in, again, if you can keep them as succinct as possible. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our panelists. We have Wouter, Kyle, and Thomas from the Iridium team. Lot of experience in here. Wouter's been in this field with a number of companies for over 20 years, so very knowledgeable. Kyle, again, has been in this industry for nearly 20 years, and Kyle, I think we've probably known each other for most of those 20 years. Working at the IMO, doing things with e-navigation and that sort of thing. And again, congratulations. I know how hard you've worked to get Iridium recognized as a Gmdss supplier, so congratulations all of you on that. And Kyle and Thomas are both former mariners, which is always great when you get mariners working with these systems, so there's a real understanding, not least that it hasn't changed that much in 20 years. So, but if you'd like a little bit more information or contact them personally, feel free to find them on LinkedIn. So with that said, I'm going to hand over the con to you, Kyle, and we will start the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David, and the Nautical Institute for really giving us the stage today. Over the past 25 years that I've been in the industry, I think that, you know, the Nautical Institute has not only been a source of information, but also been a source of inspiration. I would also like to thank all of the participants today. We know that your time is scarce, and so we appreciate you all marine professionals taking the time today. Now, with Iridium GMDSS, I would say that the tide has really turned. And this may be a bold statement, but we think it's justified. And it's justified, why? Because for over 2 decades, GMDSS was really the monopoly of one provider. And so after years of hard work by the entire Iridium family, Kyle and so many others, we're really proud that the IMO authorized Iridium as the second ever GMDSS. And we are absolutely convinced that that will be a good thing, that is a good thing for the entire marine community. And so we trust that you will see throughout Kyle's presentation that will follow how Iridium is not only giving choice to the mariner, but also bringing innovation to the safety domain. Now, before sort of giving the floor to Kyle to talk about GMDSS, I would just like to say a few words about Iridium and about our great network. So on the next slide. So we have now well over 1.5 million global subscribers, and so we bring our solutions, our connectivity together with our technology partners to 5 lines of business. Of course, you all know Maritime, but we're also into the aviation space, land, IoT, which is really booming, and then of course the government area. Now, with respect to the network, we have today a brand new network of 66 active satellites, multiple in-orbit spares. And so it is a brand new network because it's only been up for now just over 2.5 years, and it's fully up and running. And it was a great achievement to go from the old network seamlessly to the new network. And so that was quite an amazing achievement of our technical folks. Now, what is new about the Iridium network is that we are using 21st technology, 21st century technology, offering faster speeds, more capacity, of course, better voice experience. Now, what is not new about the Iridium constellation is that we still have that core architecture. And we are a firm believer in the LEO, low Earth orbiting satellites, and also in the L-band. And the reason is that LEO really lends itself very well to high mobility services, small form factor equipment, like you will see with the GMDSS unit, but also low power equipment, which is also very important. And then the L-band, from its part, gives you really that very pervasive, ultra reliable communication throughout all weather conditions. And then one element that is really unique about our constellation is also the fact that we have these crosslinks, which really guarantee that disaster-proof call path. So as you can see, the core architecture of our constellation lends itself really very well to safety and security applications such as GMDSS. And just to show you on the next slide where all these users are sort of using our services and our partner services, here's what you can see, what we call a heat map, really showing the deployment of global traffic on land, but of course also in the air and on the water. And just to zoom in on some maritime applications, you can see that this one network is really used by our subscribers for a large variety of applications. And just to give you some flavor of what these are, for instance, is in the anti-piracy area. As you know, piracy is still a very big issue on the oceans today. And so with our partners like Blue Sky Network, but also other value-added manufacturers, we have designed anti-piracy citadel solutions that are now in use on over tens of thousands of vessels today. Now, also in the sustainability area, we have been playing a big role over the past 20 years. And fisheries, of course, is being one of these areas where we have deployed tens of thousands of vessels with what you could call fisheries control and monitoring, catch reporting, and so on and so forth applications to make sure that fishing is more sustainable now and in the future. Another application that is very popular, especially with the digitalization that is going on in the market, is of course our broadband sort of service offering, where today we have well over 12,000 vessels equipped with broadband services, Certus services that are used as a primary means of communication on board ships, but also as a companion to popular VSAT technologies out there in the market. And then lastly, before sort of handing over to Kyle, we are also embedded in the future with sort of the autonomous systems, where we play a critical role in connecting autonomous systems out on the oceans. Think about gliders, think about buoys, or think about here what you can see, Sail Drone, which is an application that is being used for data collection when hurricanes are sort of happening. And a proof point was, you might have seen it on YouTube over the past couple of weeks, is where they brought the Sail Drone units into the midst of the Hurricane Sam to collect data and see the behavior of that hurricane. But obviously there are many other projects that we are working on with our partners that are also on the horizon, just like, for instance, also the high visibility Mayflower project. So to wrap it up, I think you can see that we are already delivering a lot of critical solutions that aid to the safety at sea. So this has not been something new for us. And we really see GMDSS as sort of yet another very important addition to our safety portfolio. So with that, I would like to now give the main floor to Kyle to tell you all about Iridium GMDSS and its advantages. Over to you, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Wouter. And from me, thanks everyone for joining. I know it's either very late or very early for many people. My name is Kyle Hurst. I am the Director for Maritime Safety and Security at Iridium, which primarily means I look after the GMDSS program. Hopefully, many of you do know that it was 2018 when Iridium GMDSS was recognized by the IMO. It was an amazing, very special occasion for us. A lot of work, several or more years of work by many, many people. And although my name does get mentioned a lot around Iridium GMDSS, there are a lot of very dedicated people behind me that actually do the work instead of talking about doing the work. But it is very much a group effort. And hopefully also many of you realize that it was late last year in December 2020 when we launched Iridium GMDSS. And so we've been up and running now for about just short of a year. It has been a very exciting year. All of that hard work that I spoke of by myself and my colleagues to get things up and running, to create new and exciting improvements to the system, to now actually have people who are using and potentially relying on our service for their safety is a fantastic feeling, and we're very, very grateful to have this opportunity. I talk about benefits and improvements, and I'm really passionate about this. I honestly believe that the Iridium GMDSS is the best option for safety for mariners currently in the marketplace. And to boil that down to three key advantages, what we call the 3 Cs, cost, coverage, and capability. Iridium GMDSS works everywhere. You don't have to worry about coverage. It's global, absolutely global, proper global. Capability, we've made numerous improvements to the various GMDSS services, bringing some of them to light, making them more effective, adding capability, and basically trying to ensure a key mantra of maritime safety and search and rescue is getting the right information to the right people as quickly as possible to potentially save more lives. So we've done a lot of work, not only with rescue coordination centers, but maritime safety information providers, And we hope you're able to see that through this presentation and any follow-up information that you can get a hold of. A third and key aspect for me is cost. Any technology like this is only successful if people use it. If they don't use it, if they don't have it, it can't work. So lowering the cost, both in relation to service and equipment, is key from my perspective. That means more people can afford to take advantage of this technology. And that not only helps them in the instance that if they get in distress, they then have equipment that can help with the situation around search and rescue for them. But also, the more people that have it, it can also help in the situation of helping someone else who's in distress, because this improved technology, the more people that have it, then the more people that the RCC can work with to then provide assistance to a vessel in distress. So it is definitely one of these technologies that the more people that have it, the more effective it can be, and cost is key to that in my mind. The three key Gmdss services that most people know about and talk about are distress alert, distress voice or safety voice, and maritime safety information. Distress alert's been around for a long while. It's the core to what a lot of people understand Gmdss is. It is a simple data broadcast. It provides the identification of a vessel, the status of a vessel, that it's in distress, and the location of a vessel. And it is key information for that initial notification to the Rescue Coordination Center and rescue authorities to know what's going on. However, it is a very limited amount of information. And I must say the next service for me is one of the critical benefits of Iridium Gmdss. Distress voice or safety voice, whatever you want to call it, it fills in the blanks. So and having worked in search and rescue, both in receiving and providing search and rescue, I do know that that initial broadcast or the initial message of distress alert is great, but there are so many other things that a rescue coordinator needs to know to effectively design a search and rescue plan. And safety voice fills in a lot of those blanks. Once you are talking to the Rescue Coordination Center, you can tell them how many people are on board, confirm the size and the construct of the vessel, what is actually happening, is it flooding, is there a fire, what you're actually doing about it, are you fighting the fire, are you abandoning ship? And there's a lot of information there that can massively help the search and rescue efforts on shore. And the big thing about a safety voice that not a lot of people realize is right now we are currently the only safety service, Gmdss service, I should say, to provide safety voice. The older service did have Fleet 77 up until December last year, but it was shut down. So we are the only one to provide safety voice. And I think it is massive in relation to specific incidents and getting key information to key people to make key decisions and provide search and rescue assistance. It is huge. Finally, maritime safety information. Obviously, the first two services are when you're in distress. Maritime safety information is designed to hopefully ensure you don't get in distress, providing you navigational, meteorological, and other information about the environment or the weather to ensure that you don't run into trouble. Either lighthouses that may not be functioning, container that's semi-submerged in the water that you don't want to run into, or maybe a massive storm coming your way. Maritime safety information can keep you appraised of what's going on around you to try and keep you safe. Other key features, and I just want to highlight these because they don't probably get enough attention, but we are very much through our efforts trying to bring these to the forefront, number one, but improve them and massively improve them in my mind. So distress alert relay, many people may not know the basis of distress alert relay, but what it is a broadcast from the Rescue Coordination Center around a distress, and that can come from a Gmdss terminal like ours, or any other source, can come from someone reporting it via a mobile phone, doesn't matter. The RCC sends out a broadcast to all ships in the area of a vessel in distress to tell them that there's a vessel in distress and to ask them to provide assistance. Well, firstly, to ask them to report in and then ask them to provide assistance. One of the key improvements we've made to this in particular is the fact that the Rescue Coordination Center does not have to rely on people reporting in to know that they're there. With the Iridium Gmdss, the Rescue Coordination Center can see all of the Iridium equipped vessels around the vessel in distress. So they can save a lot of time rather than sending out a broadcast which they don't know if anyone's got, and they have to rely on people coming back to them to be able to work out who's in the area and how far away they are, and work out who's best doing what. When they send out that distress alert relay, or even before, they can actually see where all the vessels are. Not only can they see them and start, working out their search and rescue plan very early, but they also have the phone numbers for those Iridium-equipped vessels. And so they can actually just call them straight up, potentially, and say, hey, 6 nautical miles west of you, someone is in trouble. Go and help them. So it can save, again, a lot of time getting people active. And I'm sure many of the mariners who have either first-hand experience with search and rescue, or maybe even remember historical incidents such as the rather large incident, the Titanic, will know it's about communication, about the Carpathia and the Californian, who the Carpathia answered, but the Californian was closer. And if the Californian had have known or been paying attention, perhaps, there's various stories there, then the outcome of Titanic could have been dramatically different. So in my mind, that was the Titanic. There were many problems and failures, but communications was key to the magnitude of how badly things went wrong. And that is why I'm so passionate about a distress alert relay. Ship-to-shore distress calling, this basically means that, during a distress, if you're the vessel in distress, you can obviously make calls to the RCC, but also if you're helping with the distress, you can make calls to the RCC as well, direct calls. And so the coordination between ship and shore becomes a lot easier because everyone has direct lines between each other. 2 areas which I think are quite important, definitely for people who are, a long way from shore. Medical advice and medical assistance. Medical advice is if you have an incident on board where you're probably not going to require medevac, and medical assistance is where you probably will require medevac. It doesn't matter. You can call either number. Authorities will sort it out. Basically, it's a direct line through to shore, through the Rescue Coordination Center, and through to medical professionals to support you if you do have a medical incident. I've had that. It wasn't anything terrible. It was basically a dental issue. It wasn't me, it was one of my crewmates, and they had a dental issue. And anyone who's had a dental issue knows that, it can be extremely painful and extremely distressing, but it was fantastic to be able to call to shore and get a level of assistance that, we're able to manage the patient until we could get her to a dentist and fix the issue. But, up until that point, she was very distressed and very upset. But as we're able to sort of work through what we had to do, things calmed down and we dealt with it in a great fashion. So to me, providing that in the future to be more available and more effective is going to be key. This is the LT3100S, our current Iridium Gmdss terminal. About it in particular, I think it is a lot of capabilities squeezed into a small terminal. That the antenna is about the size of an Inmarsat C antenna, pretty much the same size as an Inmarsat C antenna. So it can go high and clear, which is key for GMDSS. It needs to be at the highest point and needs to be clear of any obstruction. The antenna cable length can be up to 500 meters, so there's no good reason not to get it as high as possible. The control unit has your handset, has a screen where you can look at MSI. You can also plug in a laptop potentially, or your local area network to the terminal and view maritime safety information through a web GUI. So there's a lot of capability, new improvements to the system to basically ensure that people can get access to these services a lot more easily. And there's continued improvements coming up. We also have an update this week for Ssas, so the LT3100S this week. We're looking to, or Lars Thrane is looking to be able to provide support for Ssas, so you'll have Ssas capability through the LT3100S this week. And by the end of the year, we intend to have other features such as LRIT. But just a bit of a breakdown of the different capabilities in the LT3100S. On the GMDSS side, you've got distress alert and safety voice or distress voice. They're sort of combined in one function of press the button, so it fires off a distress alert first and then fires off safety voice, all in one smooth action. The way it manifests at the RCC side is, and we've worked with RCCs on this, is they get the distress alert, pops up on their computer screen saying a vessel's in distress, and generally at that time, the the phone call comes through at the same time, and then they can see who you are, where you are, that you're in distress, and they can be talking to you. Maritime safety information, as I talked about before, important. Distress alert relay, very important as well. The safety calling, which I talked about, being SAR emergencies, medical advice, medical assistance, and also navigational danger reporting, which I think is underutilized these days. Basically, for us, it's an entry in the safety contacts phone book, or it's short code, so it's 2-digit short code, and you can just basically dial up if you see, as I mentioned before, a container semi-submerged in the water. It's a danger to navigation. Maybe it's in a shipping channel, so significant danger to navigation. You can call up the Rescue Coordination Center for that area. You can report it, and they can then send out various broadcasts and information notes to make sure that everyone else can avoid that particular danger. So again, and all of these are free, so you don't pay anything for these. They're part of the service. For standard maritime communications, you have voice, and you can connect multiple devices to the LT3100S. You can do SMS through the terminal. You can do tracking. You can do email. Ssas is coming this week. LRIT coming later in the year. And also in the future, we'll be bringing VMS and e-logs, or Lars Thrane A will be bringing VMS and e-logs for fishing vessels. So there are multitudes of vessels choosing Iridium Gmdss. We've got really big ones, we've got smaller ones, we've got super yachts, we've got fishing vessels, and on the right there you can see some of the vessels are even choosing to put 2 Iridium Gmdss terminals on, which is fantastic, because again, on the subject of improvements, we have actually added a capability where if a vessel has 2 Iridium Gmdss terminals, and the first terminal, the SES1 or Ship Earth Station 1, for some unknown reason gets taken out. It's no longer operable. If a priority call comes through from shore to the vessel, the system will automatically recognize that SES1 is no longer operable, and it'll route the call to SES2, so the second terminal. So we're automatically built in to the system some redundancy, and that's a world first. That's not been done before. So, you know, steps forward. So this is the historical solution, where you've got your VHF, your MFHF, and a couple of Marsat Cs. However, in the future, you know, we're looking that potentially you could have 2 LT3100Ss, and then further on in the future, we're also putting Gmdss on our Ssas range. So these are our new broadband terminals. And there's various manufacturers there, all fantastic companies developing their technology, and all of them have committed to being able to provide Gmdss alongside their existing offerings and their future offerings in maritime in the future. It's going to take you know, a while, but you know, we are working on this, and you know, we will be turning this out in the time ahead. So there will be very good options for vessels of various flavors in relation to normal comms and pairing that with Gmdss capability. So in summary, it easily put down to the 3 Cs: absolute coverage, improved capability, and better cost. And this is our view of modernization of Gmdss. Really taking some core capabilities that have been around for quite a long time and do form part of the Gmdss architecture, but have not really been accessible for various reasons and haven't really been used. So just implementing all of the services in a better way and making specific improvements, in my mind, have a really down-to-earth ability to affect better maritime safety and improve search and rescue. All right, that's almost it for me. I did want to mention in the next week, I believe, we are releasing a series on YouTube of Iridium Gmdss training videos, and they're all about key features like we've talked about today, although they are in a little more depth. There's a series of 7 videos. They'll start going out this week. And they'll be on YouTube, and you'll see my face, for better or for worse, you know, heading up those videos. But please do check them out on YouTube in the next week. We will be sending out an email to the registrants to let them know that they've gone live, so I hope that helps. But it's all about making sure people know how the technology works and how to use it, because if you don't know how to use it, then you know, it limits the effectiveness of this technology. So thank you very much. And David, I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carl. That was a extremely good presentation. So I just want to remind people, Carl, take a sip of water because there's a lot of questions coming in. I just want to remind people that there are handouts available. That whole slide presentation is on the handout, so feel free to download that. That'll be great. Carl, like I said, that there are a number of questions coming in, but I think probably we can start with a poll. So let's look at, before this webinar, did you know that the Iridium Gmdss is currently the only satellite system available to offer distress and voice? Carl, what's the background of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was at sea, you know, I knew where the Gmdss terminal was. I knew where the red button is in the satellite terminal. I knew where the red button was. You know, generally it was only the skipper or the old man who was allowed to press the red button or consider ever touching the red button. But, you know, there was a level of comfort about this, that we had this satellite communications technology. And this is like the early to mid 90s when I was at sea. So quite a while ago now. But it was, you know, fantastic. But the thing I couldn't get through my head is, why can't you make a voice call on it? It seems silly that you've got this satellite connection, but you can't talk through it. And just dealing with search and rescue and, you know, in years after that, you know, when you're in distress and when people are trying to get information to shore about distress, being able to talk to someone, I think, is a very human thing. And it's not only very informative for the search and rescue people, but it's also very comforting for the person that's in distress, as in, I just want to be able to talk to someone to tell them what's going on so I can, you know, hopefully get help. And, you know, I do think that distress voice or safety voice has been undervalued to a degree, and I really look forward to, you know, how it can help people in the future. And, you know, the work that we've done with rescue coordination centers, they've absolutely supported, you know, the fact that we've combined distress alert and safety voice or distress voice all as one action. And they're really happy with how it performs.
Okay, well, let's see if I can share the results of this with you. Okay. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe we need to crow louder. You know, good that 36% know that it's there, but the majority probably didn't know that we were the only one to provide distress voice. So thank you. That's good information for us to know.
You've got your job cut out for you there. Let's try one more. Okay, are you likely to equip Gmdss equipment from both providers of services or only one? What's behind this, Carl?
Yeah, I think this is going to be operationally focused. I think, you know, I've said it before about redundancy, and some people are already talking about, well, if we're going to have redundancy and we've got two networks, shouldn't we have a terminal on each network? And I guess, you know, it makes sense. But I will say that, you know, for a lot of the dual vessels that we're getting right now, the vessels that want to put two Iridium terminals on, like I showed in my presentation, they're either far north or far south, where perhaps the other technology is not working very well or at all. So I think this will be operationally focused where you are. And also, hopefully, people recognize that capability that we've built in, where we're built in redundancy within our system, that if one terminal doesn't work, it will automatically forward a shorter ship call to the second terminal.
Okay, let's see what the response is.
Okay. Fairly even.
Okay. Let's come to some of the questions which are coming in thick and fast. Thank you very much for that. This question is from Hansen, and he says, is GMDSS technology necessary now that in the 21st century we have so much other technology around?
Yeah, in my view, absolutely. You know, we still have a lot of people at sea, and it's not likely to change in the very near future. I mean, I know there's other technology or talk about technology, but we still have people at sea, and anyone who's been to sea can, hopefully agree with me that it can be very isolating, and unfortunately, every now and then things do go wrong. So I think having this lifeline back to shore is, right now, as far as I can tell, it's always going to be crucial. You may argue that maybe technology is going to, come into the more, the more order, the high level side of shipping, but I fear the day where we don't have, people going out at sea and enjoying being at sea. I know I enjoy being out in the water, and I don't think that's ever going to disappear. So we're always going to need a level of safety. It will be interesting to see how technology affects that in the longer term future, but I can't help but think right now, just improving the services that we've got in our hands right now, or that are already part of the GMDSS, are key to making a difference in, now the next 5 to 10 years, in my view. Thomas?
Okay, thanks.
Just to add to that is, in a way, the Iridium constellation already came with a lot of, the new constellation comes with a lot of technology advances, you could say. I mean, the technology as such from the Iridium constellation allows for truly global coverage. This is something that over 2 decades wasn't possible. So the northern sea routes, for instance, are covered in a very reliable way. Now, on the other hand, talking about high tech is sometimes, if you so define it as high tech on the edge, something new, I think what mariners really need is something that is also proven and reliable. So I think that sometimes doesn't sort of go together with fast moving high tech, and be able to provide something that will work in any circumstance everywhere in the world to ensure safety of a mariner. So I think it's an interesting question from the person who asked it. Yeah.
Okay, there are, I know you touched on this in the presentation, about what sea areas Iridium could be used in, but there are a couple questions, and this one by Hans is specifically, is it allowed for GMDSS in the polar regions? You say you have coverage, but is it legally allowed in Area 4?
The short answer is yes, but it comes with a very shortly afterwards, but it depends. I think the operation of our terminal is absolutely global, or our technology is absolutely global, so it can be used anywhere. What I think we're focusing on here is compliance with SOLAS requirements. Right now, because SOLAS defines A3, which is the area where satellite communications can be used, for GMDSS, or GMDS satellite communications can be used, because that's defined by the coverage of Inmarsat, and that's today it's still defined by that. There are changes coming into effect, but the way IMO works, nothing sort of happens straight away. So there's a date of effect, and that date of effect of the changes to the coverage is in 2024. So in 2024, A3 will be measured by the coverage of the recognized provider that you have installed on your ship. Until then, we're in this strange situation where, although Iridium GMDSS works in polar areas, because A4 is defined as the area outside of satellite GMDSS coverage, because it's still focused on the Inmarsat coverage, technically you have to have the extra equipment for A4 areas if you go in there. However, on top of that, just because things aren't complicated enough, we do have flags right now that have modified their national legislation to say that they will accept Iridium GMDSS equipped vessels to not have that extra equipment under their flag. If they're carrying Iridium GMDSS, they do not have to have the extra HF equipment required by A4. So, and that's a national effort by certain flags to do that. So that's why it has a big, it depends. And so I think for shipping companies who are maybe looking at this, you have to check with your flag to see what their requirements are. But in general, there is still that issue with SOLAS where the coverage of A3 is defined by Inmarsat. It will change in 2024, but there are ways forward with various flags.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Wouter, I think this is coming to you. This is from Toby. You talked about autonomous ships in your presentation, and he says, what do you have to say with regards to the remote operation of the GMDSS equipment for uncrewed vessels? And I think what you were saying in your presentation was that they were using the bandwidth to communicate with unmanned vessels. But do unmanned vessels have a requirement for GMDSS?
No, I think that's probably more a question for Kyle, but where, let's say, we are sort of getting embedded into those autonomous assets, as you could call it, at sea, is really for command and control in a lot of cases. When it's about, you know, larger craft that is closer to shore, we could be one of the communication technologies in the mix, basically. So there we could serve as fail to save, redundancy, but so I think when it comes down to the question of GMDSS as such, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the legislative area in this space. But I think, Kyle, maybe you've spent so much time at IMO, so I guess they have already sort of talked about that in certain forums, maybe.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I don't think Ssas right now has the ability to consider whether a vessel is manned or unmanned. So I think in general, it comes down to the classification of the vessel. If it's a Ssas class vessel, then it requires GMDSS. So it doesn't matter whether it's manned or unmanned. So I think the only possible change to that will be classification. So if class comes in and they sort of start making decisions or pushing things in different directions, and of course national legislation. So classification and sovereign decisions of the flags may change that, but I think right now that the Ssas is not really absolutely geared to say, well, there's no people on this, so you do or do not have to have GMDSS equipment. I think right now, if it's a if it's an ocean-going vessel, it would have to have GMDSS. And you could argue there are reasons to still have GMDSS, because even though it may be autonomous most of the time, maybe it does have crew on it some of the time, or maybe it has a part-time crew. Maybe, we still have to have allowances for all eventualities, I would suggest.
Yep. Okay. And I do know that a number of flag states are looking at this, and they're looking at the equivalence and the practicality of it. Are there if it is an autonomous vessel for autonomous navigation, are there still crew on board for other reasons, or scientific monitoring or engineering or whatever? So those things will have to be taken into account, I suspect, on a one-by-one case by the individual flag states. There are quite a few questions here about interoperability between Iridium and Inmarsat. Do the RCCs have to communicate on different channels to Iridium versus Inmarsat, or is it all interchangeable or interoperable?
I think the short answer on this is there always has been a level of interoperability. I think most people don't realize that traditionally the Inmarsat Cs have been connected to about 15, 16-ish RCCs throughout the world. Not every RCC was connected, but RCCs are really good at working together. So it doesn't matter what flag you are or where you are. If your information goes to an RCC, they always coordinate to make sure that the right people get the right information and they can manage this situation. So interoperability is happening right now. We have done a lot of work to try and improve interoperability, and part of that is happening not only in what we've done previously, but right now specifically at IMO level, there is work on what we call an API, an application programming interface, which is basically a common standard for putting information into any recognized system. So right now it's ourselves and Inmarsat, and that common standard will mean that all providers of maritime safety information can just send the same information to two different destinations. We both understand it, can broadcast it. That's also looking to be rolled out to rescue coordination centers in the future, and again, that'll supply another level of interoperability. So interoperability is an often used but sometimes misunderstood term. I've also heard some people talk about, oh, why can't we have a terminal that's interoperable? That's probably not going to happen because the networks and how they work are dramatically different. So you're always going to have a terminal that is for a network. However, in the back end onshore, there will be levels of interoperability. And I think we're working towards that. And key components are things like the API, where the RCC is plugged into multiple systems and they can react very quickly through their systems.
Okay, thanks, Carl. There's a question here from Mike. And which RCC is the distress alert or the Ssas, which is the security system, routed to? What are the parameters for routing? So you have the distress alert and you have the security alert. Do they go the same place and are they dealt with the same way?
Short answer is no, they don't go to the same place in general, and no, they're not dealt with in the same way. Gmdss has priority over everything, as far as I know. So even over Ssas, that's just the way Gmdss is written. In relation to Gmdss and Iridium Gmdss specifically, where the distress alert goes, it depends. Under the rules, the terminals are required to be configurable. So the terminals work in two modes: automatic mode, which geographically selects the RCC based on the ship's location, and manual mode, which means you can go into a list of RCCs and choose the RCC that you always want to go to. So for instance, if you're from Norway, you could go to the Norwegian RCC in Stavanger, no matter where you go in the world, and you'll always go to the Norwegian RCC and you can speak to them generally in Norwegian or in English. And you can then communicate to an RCC of your choice. So yes, it's configurable in all systems, but also in the Iridium Gmdss. And just to let you know, in the background, we are adding more and more RCCs in the future. I think by the end of the year, we expect to be close to 20 RCCs in the system, which is again bigger than the what was traditionally offered. And I don't think there's any huge limit to how many RCCs we can have in the system. It's just more about the requirements of IMO and so on, international regulations. On Ssas, the requirements are different. I think it's generally to the flag and to the CSO, the company security officer, and in different ways. So I think some flags require the Ssas alert to go to the CSO and the flag, or some of them require them to go to the flag and the CSO. So there's different rules and regulations under different flags. And I guess you have to know the requirements under your own specific flag. But in general, I think from the LT side, and Thomas will correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes down to knowing the requirements for your flag. And when the person comes on to configure the Ssas, they know those requirements and configure the device to operate in the way that is approved by the flag. And Thomas is nodding, so thank you.
Right, thank you, Carl. Thomas, I don't want you to feel left out here. So I'm going to ask you a question about training. So this is from Reese. He said, what are the provisions being provided to training with the equipment? Is it part of the certification requirements for crews on ships? So we know that you have to have a GMDSS license, and then there's the operation of the terminal itself. How is that training brought together?
Well, what we do is that we have to offer technical training. We have to certify all our partners. We don't install the equipment ourselves. We have good partners worldwide. So they are all trained by us, and they're certified as well. And they are also allowed to, it's a the trainer setup. But when it comes to the end user himself, then we do not offer direct training, but there will very soon be available in the market. There will be some simulators, some software programs that you can use and trying to set up and operate the system. Another thing is that the terminal itself is very simple to use, so it doesn't require that much time for the operator himself to figure out how the terminal is working. And then one last thing is that it's always good good behavior from the installer to pass on the installed terminal in a way so also at least a couple of the crew members, they know how it's operating. But I would say that when it comes back to the question about training, do we offer training directly? No, we don't do that, but there will be simulators available very soon.
Okay.
David, sorry, I just wanted to say, you know, not that it's official training, but the videos are a good start to getting to know the system that, you know, that I mentioned before. But the other thing I just wanted to reference in relation to that last question about which RCC a distress goes to in the Iridium system, I just wanted to highlight one of the videos covers exactly that. So if you want more information about how the Iridium system deals with which RCC a distress alert goes to, again, please check out those YouTube videos coming out in the next week or two. Sorry, thank you. Okay,
thanks, Carl. I know, Carl, we've talked about training before when we've worked together at the IMO. And one of the things that our members, when IMO is doing a modernization exercise at the moment, and it drove us to ask our membership about what they would like to see as improvements within GMDSS. And one of the things that came back very strongly was that they would like to use the GMDSS terminal for non-GMDSS daily communication, whether it be commercial, traffic, et cetera, because they felt that with the terminal being back of bridge, so to speak, that they weren't getting familiar with it to use in an emergency. Is that the case with the Iridium system? It looked from your photographs that it was front of bridge.
Yeah, I mean, where it goes, I guess, is up to the you know, people who operate the vessel. But for me, my feeling, and based on my experience, I'm definitely, you know, I also have a military background. I like the saying, train like you fight, or in this case, train like you're going to actually use it. And I remember, you know, again, going back to my time at sea, it seemed like at times that terminal, the GMDSS terminal on board the vessel, was radioactive. Like, you go close, but not that close. And if you went too close, then the old man would glare at you, type thing, and don't you even think about touching anything. And I think that is a shame. I know why people want that, because they don't want to have false activations of distress or people crying wolf. And I understand that, but I also think that, you know, it's bad that if people create a false distress, but it's an absolute tragedy if someone is in distress and they don't press the button when they had time to press the button, and perhaps they never get a chance to press the button. Having dealt with, you know, investigation of maritime incidents in my enforcement background, we did have that where they just didn't press it in time. And, you know, it always struck me as such a tragedy. You had the capability, but you were just nervous about pressing it for some unknown reason, and it didn't get pressed. So I do believe that, you know, treating it like a very effective tool that has multiple purposes. You can use it every day for general day in, day out communications. But if you do get in distress, you can lift the flap, press the red button, and you can get help. I think that is a good credo in my mind.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Now, okay, Carl, take another sip of water, because Richard has asked, and Richard, you got to be careful what you ask for. He has asked, what regulatory and operational hurdles did you have to overcome, and how long did it take to become a new provider of GMDSS? So, Carl, we only have an hour. So.
Yeah. Well, it took years. I think it took something like close to 13 years. And not all of this is the process. This was 13 years between when Iridium made a very early decision. You know what? We should do that, to actually getting recognition. I think it took close to 6 or 7 years. I think it was 7 years between the application and getting recognition. So it took a long time, and there's a lot of work that had to go into that. And you know, we had the assessment by IMSO, which is the International Mobile Satellite Organization, who regulates GMDSS, and that took quite an extended period of time. So there is a lot of work, and you know, I think anyone who knows the process would absolutely agree that it is not easy, but it is GMDSS, and you have to respect that. You know, if you're going to have something that's so important to so many people out at sea, it can't be easy. It has to be examined at a very high level. So there are a lot of regulatory barriers. Thankfully, they're behind us right now, and we have achieved everything we need to achieve in relation to regulation. So yeah, it is a long process. It did take a long time. I do respect the process. I do wish it was shorter. And I do think that in the future, we do probably need to focus on making it shorter, because I think there's a massive delta between the speed of the process and the speed of technology. I mean, we could probably make GMDSS a lot better. We could add different things, but the problem is getting those things approved and going through the process takes many years. So we have to consider that. We have to have that in mind when we're looking at improvements in the future. I do want to make improvements, but I also do realize that it is an extended process in a lot of cases.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Wouter, you've got long experience with many of these technology companies. What are your thoughts on that process?
Can you just repeat the question, because the line was just
okay.
Not good.
Sure. The original question was about what operational and regulatory hurdles had to be overcome to become a GMDSS provider. But I was just thinking that in your experience with the technology companies you've worked with over the years, what your thoughts are on that process and how it can be improved.
Yeah, I think just like Kyle said, it's been a very long process, but let's also keep in mind that we were in uncharted territory, right? Because the whole GMDSS system, as it was sort of started up, was around one sort of provider and one technology. So going through all this to open it up, to break that sort of de facto monopoly, was also, I think, for the IMO sort of a journey into the unknown. So I think in a certain way, for other companies that would like to come into the GMDSS space, and to be honest, we don't see really anyone who has the capability to do that at this stage. At least you could say there will be some kind of a process, because we've gone through that hard work and through those pains to get there where we are today. So, but yeah, I think it's GMDSS is extremely tough. Of course, on the aviation side, we're also approved for safety services. So that is also not an easy one to go through those processes. So as a company, I think we know how to get things done, basically. And fortunately, I think there are also non-mandatory applications and services which allow us to go much faster to market with our technology.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I can just come with a short note here, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, just seen from a manufacturer's point of view, there is a good reason that you only have less than a handful of manufacturers of GMDSS equipment today, because it is really a very, very complicated and complex thing to go through. It takes a lot of time. The only reason our company has done this is because we all have a background developing GMDSS. So it is not something to be taken lightly, and it is not something that companies can just walk in either from a service perspective or from a hardware perspective and just believe that, all right, let's see if we can do a quick business here, because it is hard work. So yeah, we all got a little gray hair on during this process.
Okay, Thomas, thank you very much. Carl, Lalit has asked, he's a trainer, and he mentions that there's a modernization plan for 2021 to 2024. Could you provide a little bit more background information on that?
I gather he's talking about the modernization at the IMO level. The modernization plan covers a lot of things and potentially could cover a lot of things. So it is a process, and like we've sort of mapped out before, IMO processes do take time. I think there's some key benefits of what we can do to improve GMDSS in an overarching level. Some of that's based around RCCs and how they work together, and maritime safety information providers and how they work together, and how the information is sent out, validated, things like that. So there are some improvements at that level, but it does take time. For me, I'm focused on what we can do technology-wise. I mean, I will not go out of the bounds. I'm not allowed to go out of the bounds of what the architecture, the framework under IMO permits. But I do think there are a lot of good things that we can do inside the system ourselves that are inside the bounds of the regulatory framework, which can make a significant difference. And we can also obviously comply with the broader requirements under the modernization plan for IMO. But it is a very broad plan.
Okay, well, we'll stand by to hear more about that. And obviously, the Nautical Institute, we're NGOs at the IMO, and we're participating in some of those discussions representing mariners' viewpoints. And we will, of course, report outcomes of that through our channels. We got a question from Hassan about solar storms. Hello, sir. My question for solar storms: what is your crisis plan for solar storms? 1 in 100 years. We know last one in the U.S. Did you simulate that storm with class autonomous, autonomous ships? Greetings from Istanbul, by the way.
Okay. Hello, Istanbul. Greetings from London. I can't tell you the specifics of what we do in relation to space anomalies. I know we do various, not just specific solar storms or these 1 in 100 years solar storms, but there's numerous space anomalies that our team deals with in relation to managing the satellite constellation, or not only managing, effect, but also getting prepared for known anomalies that are about to happen, such as solar storms. There is a lot there. I don't know the specifics. I know it's a key part of what we do, not only for GMDSS, but across, Wouter mentioned aeronautical safety as well, and just general safety, because we have a lot of small devices for people who go out in the mountains and things like that. So it is a broad program to manage our constellation, because as you can imagine, our constellation is our life. Without our constellation, there's not much to us. So yeah, it is a very important program. It's taken extremely seriously, and it does have some very fine edges to it, dealing with the various parts of anomalies and incidents in the space sector.
Okay, thank you very much. I think maybe we should try another poll, get some people involved here. So fingers on the trigger. Let's try this one. What is the single biggest vessel connectivity challenge facing your organization? And if you have an other category, feel free to put it in the question box. So, Carl, what's the thoughts behind this?
Yeah, one of the things I think I've highlighted it before. We've tried to make a fantastic technology, and Lars Thrane A made a fantastic terminal, and I think it does have the potential to make things better. But if people, if cost is a massive driving factor, we've also tried to deal with that. But I do understand also that people have a compliant technology on board, and if they don't want to swap that out because it's not yet broken, then that's their choice and all that. But it does limit the effectiveness of a lot of the stuff that we've done, and I do think it is a shame that we can't have better or easier improvements to safety technology, because and I know there's a bias side to that. Of course, I want my technology to go out to the world, but I also do honestly believe in what we've done in relation to improving this particular safety service. And again, if people don't put it on, then that limits its effectiveness. So cost is a big scenario here, and for me, I do want to know what the drivers are and how far we've gone, and is it enough?
Okay, well, let's see. Have a look at what's coming in. What do you think of that?
It's interesting. I think I would have kind of been close to guessing something like this, that hardware, or that capital cost of replacing hardware, is a big deal, and also it's not easy. You can't just sort of snap your fingers and the terminals or hardware on a vessel changes. You got to get it into shore and a port call of a certain amount of time, get people on, do the work, get off. So I kind of suspected that would be top. Monthly service costs, yes. Inconsistent and unreliable connectivity. That I'd be interested in digging further into that, because I thought we're fairly good these days. Not just us, as in an industry. Connectivity in general, I thought was a lot better. So inconsistent, unreliable connectivity is a lot higher than what I thought it would be. So obviously, I hope it's not our technology, but it would be interesting to know more about that.
Okay, let's try another one. When considering the purchase of a GMDSS solution, what is more important in your decision making? What's the thought behind this, Kyle?
Yeah, I think this speaks for itself. As I said before, we've done a lot of work, and for me, I really want to know is what we've done enough. Is it ease of installation? What's the playoff between? I think they're all important, and they'll all score, but it's the bias, and I suspect total cost of ownership may be a big deal, that I can understand that, but yeah, for me, I really want as I said before, this technology can only be as effective as how many people adopt it. So it has a lot of potential in my mind, but once again, also I'm a bit biased on this.
Okay, well, let's see what the audience thought.
No.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit surprising to me. I'm not sure if my colleagues agree, but I expected the total cost of ownership to be higher than the capabilities, including voice. But that's refreshing. I think that's very good information. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and also I think we still see that in terms of affordability, I think we see early proof points that we're also getting sort of installed on a lot of non-SOLAS ships. So ships that don't really have the necessity, they don't need to comply to GMDSS, but yet they're installing an LT 3100S because they care about their life, basically. They care about safety, because one of the, you might say, like big ships, okay, they're big ships, they have a lot of safety instrumentarium on board, but if you think about all these sort of smaller boats, whether it's fishing boats or sailing boats, sometimes they don't have anything on board, and so those are the ones that need safety the most, you could argue. So we're really seeing, I think, a lot of uptake also in non-SOLAS, which I think makes us believe that the affordability, we're right on that point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David, I was just going to say, that's been one of the things that has impressed me so far, is we have been adopted by a lot of non-SOLAS vessels, and even like super yachts, and which I think is fantastic, because back to my previous point, more people should have it, because then it's more effective. And my other point is, if you're in distress, who wouldn't want to be rescued by a super yacht? That would be awesome. I think we all agree. Especially if they've got like a jacuzzi or a bar.
Can you put a request in with your GMDSS alert?
I'm going to write that down.
another advantage of voice. On this adoption of the non-SOLAS, is that also to do with power demand?
I think it's part of it. I think one of the big things, hopefully, is the recognition that it is a good satellite terminal that gives you connectivity or a level of connectivity no matter where you are, and it has a big red button, and also you get this other stuff for free. And I think the other component for a lot of leisure vessels, even may I say the super yachts, whilst they're multi-million-dollar vessels, I think they also do like the fact that, you know, free services and you know, the fact that it, you know, sometimes if you don't use it, you don't have any costs type thing. So, you know, I guess you don't get rich by giving away money. So, you know, having your all these free services available to your super yacht is a good thing as well.
So, Carl, you just mentioned if you don't use it, you don't pay. What's that about?
So there are plans available that if you, you know, if you don't use any of the commercial services, there's not necessarily a fee involved, and you don't pay for the safety fee, safety services. So, you know, that's not the case with all systems right now. But with the Iridium system, yeah, we basically we have that. Obviously, if you do use it, you know, the fees can be quite high, and if you do want to use it regularly, you should go to a plan where maybe it's like a mobile phone plan. You pay a little bit more upfront. The ongoing costs are a lot more reasonable, and we also have plans which are specifically built for like leisure vessels, where you can take a year plan and you can use all of your usage for that plan in the summer. So you don't have to, you know, keep paying during the winter when you're not using your vessel. If you only use it during the summer, you can use all of your usage for the entire year in the summer, and there's no more to pay type thing. So it's very flexible.
Okay, that's interesting. We have a question from Placina. Do you know of Gmdss Simulators? There's some companies that do them. Is there already an Iridium simulator available?
Yeah, I think, Thomas, you've got news on that, don't you?
Yes, I have. We have and I must admit I can't remember the name, but that's a Norwegian company. They have developed a simulator for our terminal, and then we also heard that another company is going into this and being able to offer this Poseidon. Sorry, they're called
Poseidon, I was going to say.
Poseidon. Yes. And so it is available, as I understand, it's available now, but otherwise we will also address this whenever we have it, we have the official launch of these simulators. Then you can also find the information on our website as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's a question from Hashan. What is your plan on providing service facilities across the world upon implementing the new Iridium GMDSS? And this is about maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, in short, the maintenance is supported by the manufacturer. So Thomas, he can talk about the Lars Thrane maintenance facilities that are global, and so there's Lars Thrane agents all around the world. I would suggest, Thomas, every major port would be covered, and lots not so major port. I personally have seen Iridium GMDSS installed in some very not major points. In actual Tahiti, I saw one installed not so long ago. So yes, there's service agents all around the world, but Thomas, you probably know more about that than I do.
Yes. Well, the way we have our setup is that you should somehow always be able to follow the terminal, because we have our distribution set up. We know that our distributors, they also have their dealer network, and perhaps there's also some resellers in the very end of the line, and we don't know these people. Then you have an installation situation where you might have a person who's not well trained in doing so. But the most important thing is that he will always be able to follow the line back to our distributor. So whenever we sell our equipment, we only sell our equipment via our trained distributors, and it is their responsibility to make sure that they have also trained, or they are able to offer full service to their own dealers and resellers. So you should only go a few steps back, and then you have somebody in the other end of the line who will be able to assist you and who is well trained and certified.
And just to add to that, David, on the back of what Lars Thrane A is doing with our providers of GMDSS, because they can be slightly different to the hardware providers that Lars Thrane A has. So we have the guys that can actually provision the terminals, and they're Iridium partners, but we have a requirement for our partners that they must use a Lars Thrane A certified installer to do any of the work on the LT3100S. So it's LT requirements, it's our requirements to make sure that only a certified installer is used to carry out this work. And people listening today, if you are having a terminal installed or worked on, you should always definitely use a certified installer by Lars Thrane A.
Okay, thank you, Carl and Thomas. There's a couple questions about cybersecurity, and I'll read this one by Robert. He says, on our existing terminal, we received fake mail address to one of our vessels. In reaction to that, the PSC officer entered a web page which was an official web page. Is this the start of a cyber crime? Do you understand that?
I guess I do. I mean, I don't understand the specifics, but I'd always be wary of on terminals like these, like the LT3100S. It's not really designed to surf the internet, by the way. It's it can do email and SMS and voice fairly well, but surfing the internet, it's not designed to do that. And so that's one good thing. But you should always be dubious of any link if you don't know where it came from. So I would always refer anything like that to your IT group before going to any web address like that. And I do know with the older technology, it's because you can do emails through the older technology like you can ours, it should be just considered like any other email. So just because it came through a GMDSS terminal, it could still be from a someone who is trying to send you malicious code or something like that. So always be careful of any links, I would suggest.
Okay, good advice. There's a question here by Raul, and he says, I have recently done GMDSS revalidation, and Iridium was only mentioned briefly, and the training facility did not have any hardware or training materials. Question, like ECDIS, would one consider GMDSS to be a critical bridge equipment? Is there going to be mandatory type-specific training to ensure familiarization and use, and have Iridium develop training packages? So Thomas touched on this a little bit before, but I think it's how do you get information about Iridium into the standard syllabus for the revalidation courses?
Yeah, I mean, overarchingly, it's down to the specific training establishments. And I will say that we've had quite a few training establishments who've not only contacted us to get information, and a lot of the time we pass them to Lars Thrane because it's terminal specific, so they need to know the specifics of the terminal, not just a general overview from where I stand. But also various training establishments have bought the equipment themselves, and I think that's the way it has to go. The training establishment has to buy the equipment, and they can run that equipment, obviously in a way to hopefully not create false distress alerts. We are looking at trying to create a new environment to stop any equipment, like having a test environment for these for these training terminals, but it can be a little bit tricky. So right now we have numerous places that have purchased the equipment. They do training on them. They do talk to us. So I think it has to come down to the training establishment, and they can work with us and the manufacturer, in this case Lars Thrane, to get more information to support their training courses.
Okay, and very quick question from Saeed. Will it work in the Caspian Sea?
Very quick answer, yes. Works everywhere. And I think they'll even get maritime safety information there as well. So not sure if they do weather reports for the Caspian Sea through the providers, but something to find out.
Okay, let's try another poll. With selecting GMDSS solutions based on integrated broadband for additional ship connectivity needs, does it matter? More, less, or not? What's behind this, Kyle?
Yeah, so we have a plan, obviously, as I mentioned before, to allow those the existing Ssas terminals, which go up to 700 kilobits per second through a small antenna, and we're bringing in other ranges of terminals that go smaller and slower type thing, or lower speeds. And so we're pushing out GMDSS, but we're very interested to see if that's what people want to do. In other words, in a Ssas terminal, you have the fastest L-band that's absolutely global with a small antenna, and it is extremely robust. Do they want to combine that into a GMDSS terminal, or do they want to keep it completely separate? So does it matter? Do you want to integrate these services to have less terminals that have multiple functions, or do you want to keep them completely separate?
Okay, well, let's see what the audience said. Wow, there you go.
That's comforting to know that I think we're on the right path to also overlay GMDSS on our Certus terminals, because we do see a big uptake on these terminals, and I think one of the potential configurations that I think wasn't in Kyle's slides, but is to have, let's say, an LT3100S, this terminal, and then combined with a second GMDSS terminal that is then a broadband terminal. So you sort of have the different variations of the Iridium family in terms of terminals and in terms of applications that they can support. And we definitely see a lot of interest from shipping companies for this.
Okay, good. And probably another one for you, Wouter, on the commercial side of things. There was, this is by Mike, some healthy financial results announced by Iridium yesterday. What do you see as your key growth areas in maritime in the next few years?
Well, I think the good news that we announced yesterday is that I think we are growing across the company, across the verticals. We've had a very strong year so far, and this despite this thing called the pandemic, which I think has been impacting all of us here on the call in some way. Now, on the maritime side, definitely there's different paths, and I think that's where it's great to have such an ecosystem of maritime partners. We sort of develop the core technology in terms of modules and the network, but we have all of these partners like Lars Thrane, who is building sort of general purpose terminals on Certus, on GMDSS, but we also have other partners that are sort of embedding our technology into these autonomous systems for compliance with sustainable fisheries. So I think in terms of growth, we see it as a really very large across the board growth that we are seeing with the digitalization that is happening. That's definitely a growth engine for our broadband services, but also on the safety side with GMDSS, also with Ssas, LRIT, and then of course not to forget the carbon emissions that need to get monitored more and more. I think also there's a lot of evolutions that are taking place right now, where in the compliance area we will see that satellite communication and Iridium will be embedded in a lot of these upcoming regulations as well in maritime. So I think we definitely see a lot of growth across the next couple of years.
Okay, that'll keep you busy. Yeah. I think I think this question from Mike refers, Kyle, to what you were talking about with the cybersecurity. He says, can anybody send an email to a ship's Iridium terminal, or do they have to be pre-registered to send an email?
Short answer is it depends. Out of the box, the LT3100S doesn't come with email. You have to go to one of our partners to configure email. When you configure the email, generally the standard practice of our partners is to work out whitelists and security settings. So I would hope that all of our partners would support a more diligent IT policy, which is they do have some level of protection, so not anyone can send emails to that terminal. But I will also say the one good thing about sending an email to this terminal, if there are malicious links in there, I mean, this is one of the reasons we have such problems with malicious code and malicious links and hacking these days, is because we've got big connections, whereas with the Iridium Gmdss terminal, the LT3100S, it doesn't have a very big throughput. So good luck. You're not going to be able to really do much with the link, and that's why it's very good, for simple email. But trying to do much more than that, and the hacker's not going to have much luck. So that's one sort of inadvertent built-in safety point that even if something does happen, it's going to be very limited. But yes, definitely our partners are there to support cybersecurity in general, to make sure they set up things like whitelists and blacklists and stop this stuff from occurring in the very instance, and making sure that human factor doesn't become part of the equation.
Okay,
just to add one thing, sorry. Without going into technical details, I would just like to say that our terminal is primarily for Gmdss, and then it can also offer extras like emailing. But the thing is that the way the terminal is designed is that you somehow keep the Gmdss part locked, sealed up. It doesn't interfere with any of the other communication that goes in and out of not even the terminal, because the terminal itself will just be connected to a PC. So everything related to Gmdss works absolutely isolated, and is also protected against anything that comes in from the outside.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Just one last poll before we go, and this is about the printer. Is a printer still a printer is optional, but is it preferred? Kyle, do you want to give the background of this?
Yeah, I think from my history, I had kind of assumed that people would not want printers. They consider them dated and save the trees and things like that. But I was quite interested to see that some of it came down to the operations of various companies. In other words, generally, if you're on the watch and maritime safety information comes through, you would print that out and put it in like the day book, so when the new watch comes on, they can review all of those reports in the book to see what's going on and become situationally aware, basically. So I asked this question, or we're asking this question, because I'm genuinely interested to see, which way are we heading as an industry? Do we want to, keep that? And I a lot of the time when I see documents, I print them out. I like reading paper documents and writing on them. And maybe that's not the best ecological practice or environmental practice, but it's just how my brain works. And perhaps that's the thing we need to consider here.
Okay, well, let's see what the audience thought. Is that a surprise? Okay,
yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so as I mentioned, when we finish this, there will be a little pop-up survey asking how did we do. But the good people at Iridium have noticed that there's a lot of technical questions and a lot of technical people attending this event. We have tended to take the high-level questions, and we've had a lot of questions come in, and Kyle assures me that they will look at all the technical questions, because there are a lot of technical questions came in as well, and answer those individually as best they can after the webinar is over. But the question is there an appetite for more technical events to get into the detail further. So in this survey, there is a question saying, would you like to attend a more technical event? And if so, what technical subjects would you like to have? And based on how you answer that, Iridium will consider doing a more technical event for those people who want that. And we also noted that there was a good percentage of the people in the audience today were from the training community. So I think that's a great opportunity to develop some of the more technical training aspects. So just in closing, I will remind you that we're an international organization with branches around the world, so feel free to join all of our branches, and of course join the Nautical Institute itself. So on that note, gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. It's great to see some new developments and how that's going to support the future of maritime. Again, thank you for your time and your sponsorship for this event.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks to all the marine professionals on the call as well, of course.
Yes, thank you everybody for attending. I will now close the event and you will receive your certificate in a few hours. Thank you and goodbye.